My name is not the one that you're seeing right now because in the end, I'm not really the one that you care about for the sake of the presentation that we've got here. My name again, Joe Eikenseer. I'm the director of ImagineIt's Building Lifecycle Solutions team, the technical team that does all sorts of things with buildings across North America. And really what I've got is just one quick item. Most often, we'll tend to leave slides like this or something to the back end of a presentation to say, now that you've seen everything, look at what we can do for you. Doing a little bit different. If you could go to the next slide, Richard, I just wanted to let you know what we do have for a current promotion for Ideate software bundles. As we're looking at the things through here, prices, discounts, things that you can get to be able to jump into the different tools and things that you're looking at through here. So what I would ask is if you're jotting down a number furiously here to see what we've got for the current promotion for Ideate software, be thinking about this. So if you've got a multi-user license, we'll just go for that one. We'll just round up and say $2,000. And we've got that tool that can be started to be used by people in your firm. Think about what that return on investment would be. As we're going through, as Richard's going through and showing you all the different types of things we can do, specifically as it relates to a small subset of the available things that can be done with Ideate software, what's that return to you? Take that, how much time do you spend on these things? Take that by, your billable rate, fully burdened HR rate, whatever number it needs to be. And what's it take to really, really quickly be able to get that return on investment to make your life just quite a bit better, quite a bit more, easy on yourself, a little bit more productive so you can focus on the things that matter as opposed to some of these admin tasks that we have going on. So with that said, I'm going to turn this on over to Richard, put myself on mute, help answer any questions that are coming through. As Katana mentioned, there's a chat panel, Q&A panel as things are coming through. There's a few of us on the panel to help out with this. And thank you very much, Richard. Floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Joe. Well, first I'll do a very quick introduction on myself. My name is Richard Taylor with Ideate Software, and I do have a background in architecture and over 19 years of experience with Revit. It's kind of hard to believe. It kind of keeps growing. I was fortunate enough to be one of the original employees at Revit Technology back in the day before Autodesk acquired it, and then I was at Autodesk for about 12 years as one of the product managers. And then also worked in the industry in both large and small architecture firms. And I've got my contact information there. If you want to have any additional questions, you can contact me via email or you can follow me on Twitter. And I also threw in the LinkedIn. My name is pretty common, so my middle initial is W. Actually, there is another Richard Taylor that won an Academy Award for Lord of the Rings special effects. So I am not that Richard Taylor if you're looking up in LinkedIn. But I think I'm the only one, or I shouldn't say I'm not the only one with the W as initial, but it's pretty simple, the Richard W. Taylor. So thank you everyone for joining the webinar today for automating sheets and views with Ideate software. So as Joe mentioned, and he had that promo at the beginning, Ideate software creates 4 add-on solutions to Revit. You see there Ideate BIM Link, Ideate Explorer, Ideate Sticky, and IdeateApps. But today, we're going to be concentrating just on IdeateApps. And in fact, we're going to be concentrating only on 4 of the 9 solutions that are part of IdeateApps. Because IdeateApps is a bundle that allows you to enhance the Revit experience, its productivity and efficiency solutions or applications for all Revit users. So it doesn't matter if you're in construction or architecture or engineering, these tools or these applications will allow you to better streamline your Revit workflows. So with that, why are we here today? Other than, as Joe said, to have some coffee and listen to someone speak, hopefully I want to impart some ideas to you. So I want to give you an overview of the specific tools around sheet and view management within IdeateApps. And then also, I'd like to talk about some features that we have that will allow you to automate some of your BIM naming standards for new views, and allowing you to customize those rules for creating the rules for naming the new views, and then give you some creative workflows and some tips and tricks along the way of using these particular solutions. And again, these solutions are Ideate Sheet Manager, Ideate Align, Ideate Clone, and the Ideate View Creator. And you see they're all grouped together there in the ribbon with the blue color to signify that they're all around sheets and views. Okay, so the first, I thought I'd just kind of give you a high-level description of these applications, and then I'll show you how they interact and they work within the Revit environment. So the first tool or application is called Ideate Sheet Manager. And Sheet Manager is really for anyone who wants to find, open, arrange sheets. And the main reason that we developed this is that the project browser just wasn't designed to be kind of a sheet manager. The project browser is good for certain tasks, but things like duplicating sheets or arranging the views on the sheets and keeping those aligned, the project browser just wasn't designed to do that. And then in conjunction with the Sheet Manager, we have the Ideate Clone, which allows you to copy or duplicate sheets. And this is not possible in Revit. I'm going to show you that when you click on the sheet and you right-click in the project browser to say duplicate, it's just not available. It's grayed out because Revit doesn't know how to handle the viewports on the sheet, so it just doesn't allow you to copy or duplicate. So we've solved that issue with our Ideate Clone. And so I'm going to go through some examples and showing you how you can duplicate the sheets and actually arrange the viewports and basically manage those viewports on the sheet. And then Ideate Align allows you to align the views, whether it's a plan-based view, it's going to be based on the geometric coordinates, so the X and Y coordinates of the model. If it's a section, an elevation, or any other view, basically detail view, it's going to align based on the upper left crop region. So you can say goodbye to the guide grid. This is just an easy way to align views across multiple sheets because it's very important that your documentation and your construction documentation deliverables are as high quality as possible. So before I go into the clone, I'm going to talk about these three applications together. So I'm going to switch over here to Revit. Today I'm using Revit 2019. However, we have our applications available on Revit 2016, 17, 18, and 19. So we're always developing on the last 4 releases. So we're under development. We assume that Autodesk is going to be delivering Revit 2020 here pretty soon, probably within the next month or so. So we'll be ready to go with our applications very shortly after Revit or Autodesk releases the new version. So if you're using one of those versions I mentioned, basically all of the latest features are available on the last 4 releases of Revit. So when you load any one of our applications, you're familiar with all the different ribbons here, right? There is a ribbon tab for Ideate software. And you'll see our other applications that I have here, Ideate Explorer and Sticky, but then you'll also see that I have the Ideate Renumber and all of the applications here as well. So let's go ahead and just call up Sheet Manager. And so this dialog appears, and this dialog shows me views on the left-hand side and sheets on the right-hand side. So the views are duplicated based, or I should say replicated, what your browser organization is set to. So in this case, I'm looking at these particular views. If I come down here to my floor plans, notice it's showing me 10 floor plans. But if I go over there down below, there's this little tick mark that says Hide Place Views. If I untick that, it's now going to show me all possible views. And notice that the floor plan went to 21. So it's a really nice, quick way to be able to show which views have already been placed on the sheet. Now, in the project browser, you can go over here and you can right-click. You can go to the browser organization. You can specify on, not on sheets, and then, update your browser organization. But here, this is nice is that you don't have to change the browser organization. You can just have this and, simply toggle back and forth. And it's also showing you the number of views that you have. So that's really nice. So let's go ahead right from this dialog, and we're going to create a new sheet. So when I select on that, notice I've got my title blocks at the top here, and I've got placeholder sheets. For those of you that are familiar with Ideate BIMlink, we have a workflow that we support that allows you to create placeholder sheets from the Excel file. So you could actually use one of our other solutions like BIMlink to have all these placeholder sheets already sort of laid out for you. But in this particular case, I'm just going to select New, and it's going to go ahead and create that new sheet. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click and just say rename that, and I'm going to make it so it appears a little bit higher in the organization. So I'll say Z.5, and the name is going to be called Coordination. So we'll type in a new name, and you'll see that it will organize that, or I should say refresh based on sort of the the location or the alphabetic location. So we have Z5 Coordination, right? And then in the background here, we have this, our finishes default that I was looking at. So if I double click here, this is the view that I sort of started out with, right, that I was looking at. So it has a elevation, a schedule, and a plan already on the sheet. Okay, so let's take this coordination plan, right? And let's say this sheet, we want to start organizing some views on this sheet. So over here in my left-hand side, like I said, I have the views. I can control, basically how the division between the two. So I might want to move that a little bit so I can see the descriptions. And I've already created, actually with our view creator, which I'm going to get into a little bit, but I've created some views here where I have my initials, RT, and then I have a crop region that's associated with that. I have a west coordination and a west structural. And I said this was the coordination. So what I'm going to simply do is just click on the west coordination view and then drag it over to Z.5. And then when I do that, you'll see in a moment here as it sort of thinks and spins, I can expand that, and you'll notice that it has just like all the other views or sheets, I should say, it has the first floor plan. So let's continue to sort of look at this. Let's go down here and we'll say reduce our floor plans, and let's go over to our schedules. And so let's just do some schedules here, and actually key schedules. We'll do a room schedule, and we'll do a room type, and click, drag, and drop that over to Z.5 as well. Okay, so just similar to other sort of conventions within Ideate, or I should say within Revit, I should say, and Ideate, is the fact that this is bold, right? The Z.7 finishes, which means that's the active view in the background, right? So Z.7 has the floor plan, the schedule, and this elevation, as I mentioned. Well, if I expand on Z.7, you can actually see the views underneath that, right? You can see the elevation, the floor plan, and the schedule. Let's say that I want to move the elevation, this signage elevation, from Z.7 over to my new sheet that I created called Z.5. So I simply click on the elevation and drag it up to coordination and release. And I want you to notice that over here in the back, that's why I have this view here, or I should say why I have this sheet, it is the fact that now that elevation is removed as a viewport on that sheet. And now it's associated with this coordination. Now, you might say, well, Richard, how did it know where to place these viewports? Because this was a brand new sheet. You didn't tell it, whether you wanted it upper left or, upper right. So the answer to that is it actually didn't really know how to place them. So if I look at the sheet, here's the blank sheet. And what it does is all the views that I assign to it, it places on sort of the centroid along the top. So now I can just, because they're all right there at my fingertips, I can simply take the floor plan, drag it to where I want. I can take the elevation and drag it over here. And I can also take the schedule, let's say, and move it over here as well. All right. So now I have those views arranged the way that I want on the sheet. So I'll go ahead and fit that. So there's, using the sheet manager, I was able to lay out those three views on this Z.5 coordination very easily. Now, as I mentioned, let's go look at the Z.5 over in the project browser. So let's come over here to the sheets. Let's come down to Z.5, right, our coordination. And let's just, I was talking about duplicating. So if I click on coordination, right click, and I go to duplicate, Notice that duplicate, duplicate with detailing, and duplicate as a dependent are grayed out. There's just no way to duplicate or replicate a sheet when it has the viewports on it. So again, as I said, we've developed this clone to solve that particular issue. So now when I click on the coordination right here from the same Sheet Manager dialog, I can select to clone. So when I clone, this dialog appears, and it basically now gives me the ability to say, well, I'm going to create a new sheet. And the next in the list was Z.8. Instead of coordination, I'm going to call this structural. I can also select a placeholder sheet, just as I could when I was creating the sheet. And it gives me the ability to sort of manage the viewports. So, you saw that I was able to drag the RT first floor west coordination. Well, I have this little tick mark that says show similar views. So it knows the other plans that are associated with this. So now I can actually say, you know what, I would like the floor plan west structural. That's what I want on there. In fact, if I want to see a little bit more, I can make the dialog a little bit larger. So I'm basically saying, take the first floor west coordination and replace it with first floor west structural. Now, for the elevation signage, I might want a different elevation. And for the schedule, notice how it says current. And the reason that that says current is that schedules can appear on multiple sheets. Views cannot. And so you'll notice that there's no current. I can say none, like don't actually, show any view at all. But I would then have to either duplicate it. I can duplicate it with detailing or duplicate it as a dependent. Because that's one of the laws of Revit, if you want to think of it that way, is that you can't have a view on more than one sheet unless it's a schedule or a legend view. But in this case, so I could have the room schedule be on the same sheet, or I can also swap it. So let's say I want to swap it to the lighting fixture schedule. Okay, so basically before I hit this done, I've set up, I've got a new sheet name. I've created the structural. I could pick from a placeholder sheet if I want to, or it's going to create my default because I just said new. And it's going to now have the floor plan, the elevation, and the schedule be in the same location as my Z.5 sheet, because that's what I'm using to clone. So now when I select clone, it's going to go and create that new sheet. Now, any detailing that I had on the sheet, for instance, any 2D line work would also be duplicated. Any graphics that I have, for instance, images, all the properties that are associated with that view and the title block would also be duplicated. Okay, so then now you see, if I look in the background here, now here's our Z.8 structural view. And you'll notice that then these are, if I now go to Z.5, they are in the same locations, right? And so how does this work? Let's go over to Z.8 structural. I'm going to take the plan, and just for fun, I'm going to move it off here over to the left. So they are now no longer aligned. So I'm going to show you how we can manually align these items. So if I go over here and select the Align tool, I now have the ability to say, well, which view do I want to start with? And so I want to start with the coordination view that I did earlier, right? And I don't want the room schedule. I want the west coordination. And I want to align the west structural, which is the one I moved off here, right? So when I hit the Align, right, it's going to then pop right back into place. And I'll show you that here in a second. You see that just popped right back into the floor plan there. So if I go ahead and fit that view, I can have go ahead and fit that. Makes it a little bit easier now with these tab views in Revit 2019 to be able to switch and show you and keep those up to date. Now, I'm going to preface this. A question always comes up, so I'm going to go ahead and answer the question, is that the views are aligned based on their upper left crop region when it's a non-plan view, right? When I mentioned plan, it's by X and Y. But we've had a lot of questions about the actual title block itself. And you notice that I can tab to it, or the title on the view title. And the view titles, we're not automatically aligning them right now. That is a request that we have. But because the view titles are independent of the actual view itself, what we're doing is we're maintaining where the original view title was for the other or the elevation or view that we're swapping. So that, I know people always ask me if we can go ahead and align these view titles, but that is something I'll just tell you right now that we are taking into consideration because that question does come up quite a bit. Okay, now, that was an example of kind of using those three solutions together and the align tool. But you know what? You can also not only align just one view, but you can align multiple views. So I have an example of that. I'm going to switch back here to my presentation. And I'm going to show you that. Here I've kind of created a quick little video because it had a multi-story plan. So here is just using the align sort of on its own, if you want to think of it that way, where I'm now selecting that I want which views to align. So in this case, I'm starting with the first floor podium, but I want to align the second floor, the third floor, the fourth, and the fifth floor to that automatically. So you'll notice that, as I select that, and I'm actually going to do the room schedule also on from the first floor to those as well. And then by double-clicking, I'm opening up the different views, and then I can do a tile, and then quickly I can see that there's the podium in the upper left, and then the second, third, or first, fourth, fifth, and third floor are all aligned. So this is a good example because even if the views themselves are different sizes or maybe different crops, it's still going to align it based on the geometry of the model. So it's that X, Y, Z coordinate. And I get the question asked quite a bit about, well, what if the scales are different? Well, it still will align, again, based on the geometric coordinates. So if the scales are different, obviously it's going to look a little different. It's going to be smaller if you choose a smaller scale, but it still will align and work the way that you envision it to. Okay, so those are that sheet manager, the align, and the clone are very tightly aligned. No pun intended. Or I should say very tightly associated. Maybe that's a better word. And then we introduced, actually this was a little bit later in our sequence here, we introduced the Ideate View Creator that's also integrated into our sheet manager. The View Creator allows you to create new views based on a series of, let's say, properties or view properties as well as naming conventions. So, typically the process would work this way, is that maybe you'd copy or create a new view, and then you'd have to spend a lot of time in Revit by going back and assigning view templates, assigning, the right, let's say, information to that view. Maybe you would have to go back and assign the crop regions. And so there's just a lot of time involved. Once you do duplicate the view or copy the view or create the view, you have to go back and sort of apply all these properties. Well, what if you could apply all those properties up front as you create these new views? And so that's the concept of Ideate View Creator. And again, it can save you a lot of time because it allows you to basically manage your BIM standards and your naming conventions. So I kind of want to show some examples of that. And there's basically three ways or three methods that you can use the Ideate View Creator. All right. So I'm going to switch back over here to Revit, and I'm going to close down the sheet manager for a second. Or actually, you know what? This is you can actually access the View Creator right from the sheet manager, or you can access the View Creator directly from the ribbon icon as well. So just to have a little space saving since I'm doing presentation here, here are the methods. You have plans to levels, right? You have duplicate views, and you have apply dependent. So I'm going to go through each one. The plans to levels is similar to, you probably have seen this in Revit, where maybe you create, let's say, 15 new levels, right? Now you've got those new levels, and then you basically say, okay, on the 15 levels, I want to create a floor plan now for each one of those 15 levels. And Revit just sort of creates its default views, and then you have to go back and apply all the settings. So what if there was a better way? So let's take a look at that. And in this particular case, what I'm going to do is start out with this little video, and I'm going to just change the browser organization to show levels instead. So now this is organized by level. We got level 1, level 2, level 3. And so I'm going to come over here and we're going to search for a particular view. So when I start View Creator, right, I'm going to use the Plans to Levels method. And then I'm going to talk about this quite a bit, but we have a whole number of rules that you can apply, and you can build these rules by yourself or use one of our rules. But in this case, I'm looking at level 2, and I'm searching for a particular plan. In this case, it's the duct plan. So I find the level or the plan that I want, and I want to apply that to level 1, 3, and 4. So by default, you'll see that the creation rule there, it says My Default. But in fact, I want to change that rule. And so I have some interactions here where I can change the suffix. So I'm going to say, you know, in this case, it's a duct plan, so DCT. And I can change that to level discipline or level. And that's going to set different things. And I'm going to go into all these rules of what they mean. But basically, in this case, if there's a duplicated name, it won't allow it because Revit, again, doesn't allow duplicated views with the exact same name. So if there is, we have to remove that from the list before we actually create the views. So now in this case, we're going to create 2 additional views. And you see there highlighted, there's the level 3 HVAC duct plan. And it has all the settings that we want associated with that new view that we created. So we've actually assigned like a view template. We've assigned a crop region. We've assigned a phase and other view properties associated. So let's delve into that a little bit deeper. So another method is duplicate views, and that's probably one of the most common ones, and that's why I want to do this sort of interactively. So now I'm back over here in Revit. I'm going to go to duplicate views. All right, so when I say duplicate views, I'm going to select the views that I want to duplicate, right? So here's where, you know, I could search for a view. And you also see I have the typical sort of Revit standards of duplicate or duplicate with detailing or duplicate as a dependent, which I'm going to, again, we'll talk about that in just a moment. But let's say I want to come back over here to the floor plans. And I'm going to expand on this a little bit. And we're going to come down to the first floor, let's say the finished plan, and then there's the east and the west and the signage. So I'm picking 4 views. So I want to start with those 4 views. And let's say I want to duplicate them to a new phase. So we'll say next. And so by the way I picked it was just my default, right? So I say, well, you know what? I don't want that rule. I want the rule that is going to be based on phase. So that rule that we've set up has the ability for me to interact. We call this a prompt. Interact with the phase properties as well as input a prefix and a suffix. So with this particular rule, I can just, if I'm running the rule, I can say, well, you know what? I want new construction as the new phase. Maybe my phase filter is going to be show all. The prefix will be, you know, RT dash, and maybe the suffix, since it's going to be new construction, I'll just say dash NC. So notice it's giving me a preview before it actually ever creates the views. So it says here that, okay, well, you're going to create 4 new views, and here are the names. And the phase is going to be new construction. The phase filter is going to be show all. And other properties associated with this rule are also going to be assigned. Okay? So if I go ahead and look at this rule itself, duplicate phase, and I'm going to go to edit here, you can see that in this case, we're interacting with the phase and the phase filter, and we're not really overriding anything else at this particular time. All right? So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm just going to say, you know what? Just say OK. And let's go back here. I've cleared my selections there. I'm just going to do RT dash and then dash NC. And I'm going to go ahead and create those 4 views. So it says completed creation of the 4 new views. So I can create more. If I say done, then it closes the dialog, and I can then go back up over here to the views. And so those were under floor plans, right? And there's all my RT. There's my finished floor plan NC. And if I look at the properties here, you'll notice the properties have been set for the phase filter, as I said, show all and phase new construction. So let's do that again, and I'll show you how we can interactively edit that rule if we like. So we're going to go over here to View Creator. And by the way, when you see that the little progress bar that says it's reading the rules, what it does is it actually comes over here into the settings. It will read rules from, we always supply lots of sample content for you. So we have under View Creator here, we have basic rules and bonus rules. And I'll talk about each of those in a moment. There's probably a couple dozen different rules associated with those. So what this means is that if there are no rules within the project, it's going to load from this particular directory. So you can have your own Office standards, and it will load just those rules that you need or that you approve for your particular office. So let's come over here and again select the views. I'm going to do the same process again that I did, right? So we're going to come back down to the floor plans again, to floor plans, and I'm going to pick on the same ones I did before, which was the finished plan, east and west, okay? And then I'm going to say next. Now this time, the duplicate phase, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say edit. The first thing I'm going to do is maybe call it duplicate phase, and I'll just say RT just because I'm modifying this one and I may not want to overwrite the rule name, right? So here's sort of what I call the secret sauce, is that we have a formula. This is what it was like, the prefix. When I double click on this, notice it says prompt for value. That's why it gave me that little value to say, oh, I wanted to type in RT as the prompt. So when someone's running the rule, it's going to prompt for this value called prefix. Notice it didn't prompt for the name, and it did prompt for the suffix. So in this case, instead of the suffix, which we typed in, remember, it was NC for new construction. Well, I don't want that to even have the user have to worry about what phase it is, as an example. So what I'm going to do is remove that, and I'm going to actually have a field that comes right from the Revit database. So in this case, you can say, well, you want it to come from the new view, the original view, the parent view. I'm going to say the new view. And we're going to come over here, and we're going to come down to phase name. So let's come down to phase name and say OK. So what it's going to do is read the property of the phase. Now you'll notice down below it's giving me a preview. So what it did is it kind of squished the name of the view and the phase together. So what I'd like to do is add a constant. And so I'm going to give it a value of a dash. I am not going to prompt for value because I don't want the user to interact with it. I just always want it to be a dash. So I put the dash here. Now the dash is at the end, right? We want it to be between the name and the phase name. So you simply drag and drop the formula, which is really nice. And so you organize it in such a way that you have the prefix, the name, the dash, and the phase name, okay? And you see that I'm actually assigning the phase and the phase filter the same way. Now I can assign the view template as well. But I'm going to show you something here that's kind of interesting. Is if I go over here and I say, let's say architectural plan, and I click this, what's going to happen is it's saying, hey, Richard, you can go ahead and assign the architectural plan, but as part of the properties of that view template, the phase filter is set. So therefore, you're not going to be able to interact with the phase filter at this location. So it's giving you that warning. So what we do is we have kind of a hierarchy, right? And the view template is at the top of the hierarchy. If you assign the view template, that's what's really controlling the rule. So I'm going to leave this in place as a sort of an error, or I shouldn't say not an error, but a warning. And I'm going to show you how that works. So I'm going to say save and close, right? And it's actually telling me that, hey, there's some properties here that are kind of going to be overridden. So what this does now is, notice the top, it says duplicate phase RT. That's the name, the new name I gave it, right? And so remember that we had the phase. So if I change, remember before when I typed in new construction, I had to type in NC? Watch what happens when I do office renovation. If I come over here, notice how I should have done here. Let's do new construction just to show you that changing. See how it's now the actual name of the view is picking up the phase. So that's just one way of being able to like sort of apply a naming convention In this case, I'm sort of driving the naming convention of the view based on the phase. That's what I told it to do. And notice that the phase filter, I'm not able to interact with it, even though I said prompt for the value, is because it's being driven by the view template. Okay? So in this case, you know, I can also do a prefix. So if I do, you know, RWT dash and say tab, now notice that those new views are going to be created. So we've got the office renovation, we have the architectural plan here. So I'm going to say create those 3 new views and done. So now notice that they are over here in my project browser. When I double click on them, right, there is the first view, RWT. Notice that the phase over in the view properties has been set to office renovation. If you scroll up to the top here, all right, not the top, it's under the identity data. Notice that the view template has been assigned to the view. Now this is also key because when you come over here to view and you look at our view templates, notice that you can manage your view templates, but you can apply and you can also assign. Apply means that, okay, I want to apply this site plan. So what I'm doing is all the properties of site plan, I'm applying it to the view, right? Yeah, I would like to partially. I'm applying it, but yet still the view template that's assigned is architectural plan. So there's 2 different methods here. There's applying and there's assigning. I know that can be kind of confusing, but you know, Revit allows you to do that as well. So back in View Creator here, when I go back to View Creator, I just wanted to point out that we have that same ability. So when I went to that duplicate views, and we'll go ahead and look at the that rule, what we have there is the ability to apply up to 3 different view templates. And the reason that we may do that is maybe one of those view templates sets the design option. And so you want to apply that, but then ultimately you want architectural plan as an example. Now I'm going to cancel this for a moment because remember, I want to show you how this works here. Remember when I run my view that the phase filter was not available. So if I came over here to my view, came over to my view templates and said manage that, I'm going to go to the architectural plan, and under the phase, let me see, phase filter, I'm going to say uncheck that. So that means, you know, it says include, don't include anything about the phase filter. So say OK. Now we're going to go back to our View Creator, and I'm going to pick another plan, let's just say. And so I'm going to duplicate views. And so we'll come over here to a floor plan, and again, I'll just say first floor signage. Say next. And notice that because I now have the architectural plan, this phase filter is available to me. So if I select the building section, notice the phase filter is grayed out. I can't click. But because I unchecked that particular property in my view template, the view template is called architectural plan, I now have the ability to override interactively here and say, well, you know what? I really want it to be show previous and new as an example for the phase filter. So that's where I just wanted to show you how that works, is that the template will take precedent, and then you can do the sort of interactive prompts. All right. Before we get on to more about the rules, I want to come back over here to the View Creator, and I talked about there are 3 methods, right? And I don't want to be lax about the 3rd method. So we had the plans to levels, we have the duplicate views, which I've been showing, and then we also have the apply dependence. All right, so let's look at the apply dependence for a second. So I have a video for that. And so here is a situation where under level 1, we have an HVAC duct plan that has 3 dependent views. And in that case, there are 3 different areas, right? That we have maybe left, middle, and right. So that's the duct plan A, B, and C. So their crop regions have already been defined. Everything's been set. Those are the 3 dependent views to the HVAC duct plan. Now that we have those, you want to apply those same dependent views in the same method with the same crop regions to other plans. So now I can say, well, you know what? I want to go up and select the lighting plan on level 1, the piping plan on level 1, level 2 piping and power plan. And so I'm selecting these on multiple levels. And so this view that or I should say this rule that I've set up now is going to apply all of those. So you can see I now created 21 views, or 27, but the first 3 are duplicates, so I'm going to just remove them from my list. So now I've got 24 views. So all I have to do is select the Create 24 Views, and it's now going to create those 24 views each sort of sets of 3, right, under the project browser. So as I expand the project browser, notice that I have level 1 piping, level 1 plumbing that have already been created, or that have been created in that process. So this is a really nice way to be able to create lots of dependent views that you may need for your model. Okay, so I talked about that we'd get into the sort of the nuts and bolts a little bit of the rules. So as I mentioned, that you have that little cog wheel here, and so if I go over to the View Creator, the dialog, this little cog wheel here, like I said, is the settings, allowing you to set where the default location for the rules are going to be. Then when you actually edit the rules, you can import or export. When I say import, here's where I'm now in the bonus rules. And so you can see all the rules that we have that are delivered as part of the View Creator. And if I go up 1 level and then go to bonus, you can see other rules that are dealing with levels, sheet level types, duplicate phase, phase demo rules, and so forth. So that's kind of nice that we give you a lot of content to start out with. So that's how you would access it. And so just sort of, kind of summarizing all of these 4 solutions and putting it all together is that, you can create View Creator, or you can use View Creator to create new views for design options, for phase, for specific disciplines. So, as I mentioned, there is a first floor, and then you need a first floor HVAC plan, first floor plumbing, first floor piping. And so those are very easily created with View Creator with the crop regions, the properties, all assigned, and the correct view naming. And as I mentioned, you could even use Ideate BIMlink if you've got placeholder sheets to read information from Excel to create those placeholders that then when you say create new sheet, it can use those placeholder sheets. And then using Clone and Align to arrange the new views that you have, for instance, the design option, the phases, the disciplines, on sheets with the exact alignment and the arrangement between sheets. So a tip, and I mentioned this, but I think it's important to sort of reiterate, is that when you align views using the Ideate Align, as I mentioned, if it's a plan-based view, so if it's a floor, ceiling, area, a structural plan, it's going to align the views based on the X and Y coordinate of the model, the geometric model coordinates. And again, even if it's a different crop region or a different scale, it's going to know where the geometric location is. If it's a non-plan view, so basically everything else, so if it's a section, elevation, schedule, detail view, it's going to be aligned based on the upper left of the crop region for that particular view. Okay, then this is kind of nice. This is something I didn't really mention, but I should kind of iterate here, is that I'm going to switch back to Revit here for a second. And I'm going to pick the view that I was selecting, that duplicate phase RT. You'll notice when I pick on it, down below, it's basically, there's 3 methods. These are the methods: plans to levels, and duplicate views, and the final is apply dependence. Only the middle one is highlighted, so that means that this rule is only applicable for duplicate views. But if you select on level, you can see there's actually a different one. Here's a good one. Level discipline is good for plans to levels and duplicate views. So you'll notice that as I select on these, and if I look at dependence, right, that one's only going to be applied to dependence. So if you if you want to do a quick assessment of which rules apply to which methods, that's a nice way to be able to click on the rule, and you can see down below which one will highlight or which number of methods will highlight so that you know that that rule is applicable for, let's say, using create dependents or duplicate views as an example. And then the view rules themselves, like I mentioned, I tried to show this in the fact that that prompt for value, if that's checked, it means that when the person actually runs the rule, because you think about, like, probably the BIM manager is going to be the person that maybe creates these rules, and then the users will be running those rules. So, there are ways that the BIM manager or the project manager can set it up so that they can be interactive. So if you select or tick that prompt for value, like in the case where I did the prefix or the suffix, it's going to allow the person to interact with that. Or in the case that I showed where I want to set the view or the phase filter, make sure that I had that right. So when I went back here to my RT edit, and I was doing the phase name, phase filter, that was right. I wanted to make sure I was saying the correct thing. So when I applied this phase filter, right, that was I told it to be interactive, but there were times where that wasn't always interactive because the view template drives that. And in fact, that's my next slide here. So the fact that is, if you get something that you've told it to be interactive and it's not interactive, it's grayed out, it is because there's another property that's overriding it from the view template. It's basically saying this is what, that property is set first in the view template, so therefore as you run the rule, you can't interact with it. So that's a good lesson to remember. And then again, I tried to show this is that you can apply multiple view templates and then finally assign. So there's a difference there. Like you can do this in Revit too. You can apply the properties of up to 3 view templates, and then finally, if you choose to, you can assign, which means it sort of gets permanently attached to the view properties. All right, and so that you can go through either one of those. So hopefully I gave you an overview of the sheet and view tools under IdeateApps. I showed you by using Ideate View Creator that you can create new rules or new naming conventions, basically, that were maybe, like I said, brought directly in from the property that you're dealing with, for instance, the phase. Or you could have naming conventions like with Kobe. If you're dealing with Kobe, there's no spaces that are allowed, for instance. So you can control exactly what those new views names are going to be. You can customize the rules very easily. So I showed you some examples of that, of being able to edit and modify the rule. And I only really showed you the tip of the iceberg there. There's a lot of customization and flexibility that you can build into these view creator rules.